Ki ana hau ki a koe Cassidy, koruatahi Gemma. E rau rangatirama, tēnei tumihi atu ki a koutou katoa, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou. Well, I feel very honoured to be here this evening, and I'm going to take this out like this, that's better. But particularly very humbled to be following you, Kylie, hearing your very inspirational kōrero, your story. And as I sat there, I was taking little notes about some of the things that you shared with us, because what I want to do this evening is to, I guess, do the same thing, share some of my own whakaaro, my thoughts about culture, but particularly how it has shaped me as a parent, as a member of a fairly extensive whānau, but also my professional career. But most importantly, as a leader that's very passionate about a greater purpose. And so that's why I've called my presentation tonight about my own cultural DNA and purposeful leadership. But first of all, I just wanted to start and tell you a little bit about myself, because if we were in a hui, if we were in a marae, one of the first things you would do after being welcomed is that you would then go around the whole room, and that's whakawhanaungatanga, and you would get up and you would tell a little bit about yourself, usually about where you're from, your mountain, your river or waterway, your whānau, family background and so on. But I'm not going to do that now, because otherwise this is going to take us all night to do that. And the next time you have your hui, you can find some ways of being creative and doing that yourselves. But I am going to introduce myself to you all, and this is my little pēpeha, ko waiaho. Who am I? So, ko Taupiri te maunga. I'm sure you all know, if you don't know where Taupiri is, you really should, because if you're going to Auckland, on State Highway 1, you drive past it, and you will see, obviously what's significant about it is that it's a urupa, and a number of people are buried there, including some of my own tupuna. Ko Waikato-Te Awa, fantastic, you know, come on. Waikato, our most strategic, most important asset in our region is our tupuna awa. Waikato iwi, so I am a member of Waikato-Tainui, but I also have whakapapa associations and links to Ngāti Maniapoto, which is the whole Te Koiti, a neighbouring iwi, and also out of Kawhia too, out of Ngāti Patupo. And the other connection you make when you're introducing yourself in hui Māori setting is, you know, who's your big chief? Who's your eponymous ancestor? And so for Waikato-Tainui, it is Pōtatau Te Whirowhiro. He was the first Māori king, so we reference our relationship to Pōtatau. I was brought up and born here in the Waikato. Brought up in a little place called Whatawhata, so who knows where Whatawhata is? Very good, because if you go out to Raglan, you go past Whatawhata. And I love talking about my family and my background as a way of introducing myself. Next slide. What's also really important particularly to my whānau, because my parents and grandparents had very little formal education, they really wanted their children and their mokopuna, their grandchildren, to achieve at school. So from, you know, I'm one of 9 children, so a big family. There was no question that we were always going to, you know, go as far as we could in school, because both my parents, they got to about Form 3, is that year 10? Year 10. Okay, can you hear me? I'm going to have to yell. It sounds like the mic is gone. So, you know, they got to about the equivalent of year 9, year 10. So I went to Fraser High. Do we have any Fraser High students here, ex-students? Great. Only one person, come on! I should have asked how many of you are born here in the Waikato. So that's my high school. But obviously I've also had the opportunity, as you will see, to have gone and studied overseas, University of Wisconsin in the United States. I won't say when I went there, but I decided I wanted to do a postgraduate degree, so I went away for 18 months. And a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to do a leadership program at Stanford. And while I was at Stanford, went to Google X and a whole other, well, of course in Silicon Valley, there's all of these companies and IT, fantastic entrepreneurs and so on. And I'm a graduate of Waikato University too. But I always come back to my primary days, and that was at Whatawhata School. I think about those times quite fondly because when I was going there, there were only about 60 students at Whatawhata at my time. There were only about 60 students when I was going to school at Whatawhata, and to be honest, there was almost everyone there was related to me, so they were either cousins, and of course, as I said, I'm one of 9 children, so I've got 6 older brothers, and when you've got older brothers at a school like that, they look after you alongside your cousins. So, you know, I always think about my primary days. In terms of work, and I'll go through this reasonably quickly, so I've had quite an extensive career in a number of different settings. So I always acknowledge when I went to Wellington, like most young adults, you decide, oh God, I've had enough of living in Whatawhata and Hamilton. I'm leaving and going away, and I ended up in Wellington, and I spent about 12, 13 years in the public service. I acknowledge that because it was in the public service where I started my training as a policy analyst, so somebody that looked at issues, thought about problems, but more importantly, what are some of the solutions that you need. And I spent almost 5.5 years in this building here, and given we have a new government, and I was in the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, and during my time as an advisor, there were 3 Prime Ministers, so Jim Bolger first of all, then Jenny Shipley, and then my last couple of years was Helen Clark, who was the Prime Minister at the time. So, you know, I've got a very good bullshit detector, I'll say that, when it comes to politicians, whether it's in central government or local government. So when you've worked alongside ministers, and you know, you get to understand what motivates them. So that's why I've always taken an ongoing interest in the sort of political landscape, and when I've had conversations with my daughters before the election, you know, it's great to see them. They're very much like that too, so are my nephews and nieces. But then I decided, after spending, like I said, about 13, 14 years in the public service, that I really wanted to, I made a deliberate choice to leave the public service. And when I say a deliberate choice, you can get quite caught up in that bubble in Wellington. And I really wanted to get back, what I called at the time, back into the real world. And so I moved out of the public service and set up my own consultancy business. And that business was focused on called Mauri Dao, with very much a strong focus on Māori knowledge, Māori people and so on. And it was a policy, strategy, leadership. And I loved it. I loved working for myself and, you know, really determining your own agenda and so on. And so that kept me busy for about 7 years before I decided it was time to return home. So I returned home to the Waikato in 2010. And when you have your own business and when you are consulting, you know, you get... It's lovely, you don't... Some more battery. Battery. All right, I'll come back out again. So when you have your own business, of course, you can just determine where you base yourself. And for me, it was my decision to return back to the Waikato and wanted to be closer to my family, to my mother at the time, and because she was getting older and so on. So when I came back to the Waikato, the next slide, please. I applied for the Chief Executive role at Waikato-Tainui, and I was very fortunate because I got the role, and I had been in the role for about 6 years and then left last year. But just a couple of things about the iwi, Waikato-Tainui. We were the first iwi to settle a historical treaty claim in 1995, so that's almost 22 years ago. And if you know anything or if you're interested in iwi relationships and history and so on, particularly here in the Waikato, the basis of our settlement was all around the confiscation of lands, vast tracts of lands in the 1860s. And so that was the grievance, and the claim was settled in 1995. At the time, the value of that settlement was 170 million. It's now 1.2 billion in terms of total assets, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But ultimately, the iwi is all about the people. You know, how do we grow, how do we ensure they prosper, sustain themselves, and so on. We have 76,000 members that are currently registered. Our population base, and it's great to be here because almost 70% of those of our tribal membership is under the age of 40. So unlike the general population, which is ageing, the Māori population is youthful. And hence the focus really being on our rangatahi, and we've got a number of initiatives. Certainly when I was CEO, very much a strong focus on investing in our youth through education and so on. So that's a little bit about Waikato-Tainui. If you go to the base, we own the base. If you have used or have stayed at the Novotel or the Ibis, or your whānau has in Hamilton, we own those hotels. We also own the airport hotel in Auckland, and it enjoys one of the highest occupancies. In fact, I can't get in there. In fact, a lot of people can't get in there because it is booked out a lot of the time. And so while I left the tribe last year as the Chief Executive, I've recently been elected the chair of our tribal parliament. We have 66 marae, and to be elected in any of those leadership roles, it is up for our membership, our various marae, to elect you, and there's a really long process, and you've got to get a threshold, and you've got to get more than 34 of the marae need to support you. So it's a very democratic process, and it is all about what is the vision you have for your people, but more importantly, delivery. So that's a little bit about Waikato-Tainui. I then left a year ago and I joined the transport agency. And many people have said to me, why did you leave the iwi and go into New Zealand Transport Agency? A couple of reasons why. Most importantly for me is that the transport system itself, it impacts on all of our daily lives. If you think about the system in terms of not just roads, although roads obviously features a lot, you think about walking, cycling, public transport, the movement of freight between two ports in our cities. So I was quite excited by the opportunity of going into a different space again. So if you think about my first career was in the public service, then I made a big leap out into iwi. I'd never worked in an iwi world or a Māori organisation before. And then I got to the point of saying, and I often do this after 5 years, I reflect and take stock, and where do I go to next? And so again, this was quite a deliberate decision on my part, because there's not a lot of women and not a lot of Māori that work in the transport sector. So a lot of operators and so on, so a lot of engineers, a lot of planners. And I think, I certainly was quite different, and I know I am, in terms of diversity. I sit around our senior leadership team, and I am the only Māori around that table, and there's a couple of other women. But,
you know, we've got a long way to go. So that's one of the reasons why I joined the Transport Agency, and I am the Regional Director for what we call the Central North Island, so Waikato, Bay of Plenty and Taranaki. And there's a considerable amount of investment that's being made into the Waikato and Bay of Plenty because we're part of that whole growth of the Upper North Island. So the expressways, the cycleways, walkways and so on, you know, that's a reflection of the growth, population growth, the economic growth that's happening in our region. Next slide. But some of them exciting things I get to do. I didn't have a very exciting day today because I was in Tauranga and I was with a whole lot of elected officials over there talking about their priorities and the new government. But these next two images, this one here is a week ago, we opened up the Perry Bridge, but also the Horotu section of the Te Awa River ride. And so this is an example of where, in this case, we partnered up with a number, Waikato District Council, Perry Group and others, to contribute, to make a contribution to this really important walkway, cycleway and bridge. The next image, again, this happened quite recently too, is the Common Drive underpass. And as I said, this is an initiative. In fact, this was, I think, many, many years in the making and finally happened. But I wanted to illustrate this because these are the sorts of initiatives and projects that often don't get what I call showcased in our business because people think about the roads, you know, and you have to because I know the Hamilton section, for example, that's currently being built, that's about a $700 million investment. The Huntley section is about 500 million, so you know we're talking big numbers. But what I've observed in NZTA since I've been there is in fact it's these projects that really do make a difference in for communities. So I was very excited, particularly for our region, that you know, was involved in these particular events. So that's the Transport Agency. But I really want to coming back again, connecting to the topic tonight around culture. And as I thought about my presentation tonight, I thought about, well, what is it that really drives me? And it comes back to, I think it's already been mentioned a little bit earlier about values and beliefs. And I feel very blessed that I had grandparents and parents who really instilled in me and my brothers and sisters these values, which are really important around hard work, because as I've shared with you, some of the things that I do, and that's only half of it, you know, you don't get to do what I've been doing and others that do in the room here. You've got to work hard. You've got to be really persistent and focused. I'm very clear about, you know, respecting others and treating them the same way as you'd like to be treated. Again, it was something that my parents in particular instilled in me. That whole generosity, you know, kindness to others. That's another driver for me about how can I support others to realise their potential or deliver outcomes. And finally, it's about humility too. And again, I think about my grandparents and parents who had all of these values, but they were very, very humble people. You know, materially, they certainly weren't compared to today. We didn't have a lot when we were growing up, but they were really, like I said, humble people. Next slide, I want to just wrap this up very quickly. My vision. So I want to introduce you to my two daughters because really they give me license, I think, to be here. My daughter on the far side, on your right side, is Kiriata. Kiriata Te Kawanata Royal. She's 27. Kiriata and Te Uranga, who's in the middle there, when their father and I at the time when they were born, we thought really carefully about their names So we go back to your culture again. Names are really important to us. And Kiriata was born in the year of the 150th year of the signing of the Treaty of Waitangi. And Kawanata means covenant. And in Taitokerau, in the north, that is the word that they use when they refer to the treaty. They refer to it as a kawanata. And so that's where she got it. We decided then that that would be her second name. Her first name is a tupuna name. Te Uranga is the same. Her second name is Te Hikoi. And the year that Te Uranga was born, there was a major hikoi of hope. And that was in 1998. Te Uranga is now 19. And so when she was born, that very day was when the hikoi of hope came into Wellington. And the issues that they were walking for at that time was all about poverty, all about mental health. You know, they are issues that are really relevant now. But, you know, for me, when I think about the things that I do, it's all about my girls. It's all about those others, future generations, and I just wanted to acknowledge them. And the next slide is because I am also a grandmother. So when you are a grandmother, and this is Sarah and Amokoni, that really does reinforce the responsibilities you have. So when Kiriata, she was 19 when she had my first mukapuna, she rang me, and it was sort of one of those conversations, and if you're a parent in this room, mother, you will be thinking, she's either dropped out of university or she's pregnant. And I said to her, let's wait till I get back to Raglan, and then you can ring me. Well, when she rang me, she goes, oh Mum, I hope you're going to be happy. You're going to be a young grandmother. Oh, you know, I was just in shock, to be honest, but, and I think I said something to her like, what about university? And you know, her response to me was, oh, don't worry about that. I'm going to take one semester off, and then I'm going to go back and finish my degree. And in fact, that's exactly what she did. She's doing music at Victoria University. And the awesome thing about that was that when she graduated, the university contacted me and invited me to be the keynote speaker during her graduation. So as I sat there, after I did my kōrero, sat down, and then she came up to get her degree, I turned to the dean and I said, did you just know that, you know, that Kiriata was graduating and that I was her mother at the time? They said, yep. And we also know that the fact that she took a semester off to have baby and so on. So, and Sarah was 2.5, I think 3 years old. She graduated with an honours in music and composition. So, you know, I love sharing that story because even though she's a young mother, you know, you can still, with that support and focus, do things. And then a couple of years later, she's given me my second book. But really, I also wanted to acknowledge that certainly in my whānau, I've got two of my nieces here tonight, Amy and Rachel, and this photo was taken earlier in the year when we lost my mother, their Nana, and she would be 90 on Saturday. And I thought it was just appropriate to share their story too, and I'm glad they're here tonight, because this is their story. But that's why I said, you know, my focus is very much about making a difference and our future generations, and I'm really proud of my nephews and nieces. So what are the key messages to take away from this, my kōrero tonight, is, for me, my cultural DNA has always been about being really strong in my own identity. So I've always known where I've come from, my own heritage, my whānau, my connections to whatawhata, Ngāti Mahana. I think you've got a really strong sense of the importance of values for me, values that have been, I've been you know, drawn on from my parents and grandparents. while I'm good at kōrero, actions speak louder than words, and I think that that's so important, that whatever you're passionate about, you know, get out there and act on it. And you know, like I have, you'll have failures along the way, but just learn from those. That's what makes it more exciting for you. Courage and resilience. That's big for me when I decided to make a contribution at an iwi level. If any of you are thinking about working for an iwi, come and talk to me, because I'll tell you now, it's really challenging, particularly if you're a Māori woman, and you know, you really have to have a backbone, be very strong, be very resilient and persistent. And I guess the other part for me is just self-belief, and I think Kylie touched on it really well too, about, you know, the support that you get from others. And that's what's fantastic to see so many of you here this evening. Because this movement will only succeed if you support each other and what you do. And so to wrap up my kōrero, I just wanted to end on this talking, on saying, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. What is the most important thing in the world? It is people, people, people. And that is what drives me, and that's something I've always been passionate about, and it's not going to change, right till I die. So, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.